First contact's price. The message arrived on every screen on Earth simultaneously. Admiral Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the UES Sentinel as billions of displays flickered with the same alien visage, gray-scaled skin, 4 pupilless eyes, and mandibles that clicked with each syllable. People of Earth, the translation overlay rendered in perfect English. I am High Commander Vexthor of the Verax Imperium. Your world now stands at the threshold of a great honor, incorporation into our eternal empire. Resist and face extinction. You have 6 hours to submit your response. The bridge fell silent. 24 hours earlier, the massive Verax vessel had appeared just beyond Luna's orbit, its hull spanning nearly 30 kilometers. The combined might of Earth's defense fleet, 40 ships that humanity had proudly built over the last century, looked like toys in comparison. Status of evacuation protocols. Admiral Chen asked, her voice steady despite the weight pressing down on her chest. Lunar colonies are at 60% evacuation. Admiral, her XO commander Marcus Rivera reported. Mars colonies are preparing for potential lockdown. The council is convening in 5 minutes. Sarah nodded, her dark eyes fixed on the behemoth before them. Humanity had dreamed of first contact for centuries. Now that it had arrived, it felt more like a nightmare. The emergency council session was brief. Earth's leaders weren't foolish enough to believe they could win a direct confrontation. But neither were they willing to simply bow to an ultimatum. They needed time. 5 hours and 58 minutes after the initial transmission, Sarah broadcast humanity's response. The Earth Unified Council welcomes peaceful dialogue with the Verax Imperium. We request a grace period of 30 days to prepare our world for proper integration. The response came instantly. You have 7 days. Attempt any evacuation beyond your atmosphere or military buildup, and we will demonstrate our power. Your species shows wisdom in accepting inevitability. What followed was the most intense week in human history. On the surface, governments worldwide began the show of preparing for Verax rule. But deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a facility known only to a handful of individuals, Dr. Elena Santos made a discovery that would change everything. The energy signature is unlike anything we've ever seen. She explained to the emergency committee, her hologram flickering in the secure bunker. Their ships don't just bend space. They exist partially outside of our dimensional framework. It's why our sensors have trouble getting clear readings. Can we replicate it? General Zhang asked, leaning forward. Elena's hologram smiled. Better. We might be able to understand it in ways they don't. The Verax use brute force to punch through dimensional barriers. But what if we could find the seams instead? The committee gave her everything she needed. Resources, personnel, and most importantly, time. Time they didn't have, purchased with the most bitter currency, submission. On the 7th day, the Verax began their integration. Massive ships descended through Earth's atmosphere, landing in every major city. Millions watched in horror as alien structures erupted from their hulls, growing like crystalline cancers into the sky. The message was clear. Resistance was futile. Sarah Chen was relieved of command, her proud vessel now under Verax control. But as she walked down the Sentinel's gangway one last time, a young lieutenant pressed a small data chip into her hand. On it was a single set of coordinates and a time, 47.1915 degrees, and 52.8371 degrees WE, 6 months. The Verax believed they had found another primitive species to add to their collection. They didn't realize they had just made the biggest mistake in their empire's history. Humanity had not surrendered. They had simply changed battlefields. As Sarah walked away from her ship, she remembered an old quote. The most dangerous creature is not the one that attacks with fang and claw, but the one that bides its time, learning its enemy's weaknesses. The Verax would learn this lesson too late. In the depths of the Pacific, Elena Santos watched quantum probability matrices dance across her screens. Each failure brought her closer to success. Each setback revealed new possibilities. And in the darkness of the ocean floor, humanity began to forge its own destiny. The chains that would bind them would become the keys to their liberation. First Contact's price had been steep, but humanity's response would shake the foundations of the galaxy. The silent years. 3 years into Varrac's occupation, Earth had become unrecognizable. Crystalline spires dominated every skyline, their surfaces rippling with alien energy patterns. Humanity appeared broken, subservient to their new masters. But appearances can be deceiving. Deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean, in a facility carved into the abyssal plain, Dr. Elena Santos stared at her latest test results with trembling hands. "Run it again," she ordered, her voice hoarse from lack of sleep. The quantum chamber hummed to life. Inside, a small probe disappeared from normal spacetime, leaving behind a ripple of possibilities. Unlike the violent dimensional tears created by Varrac's ships, this transition was almost elegant. 3 seconds later, the probe reappeared. "Containment stable," reported Dr. James Chen, son of the former admiral. "No quantum bleed. No dimensional scaring." He looked up from his console, eyes bright. "We did it, Elena. We finally did it." But Elena wasn't celebrating. She was already running calculations for the next phase. "Send the data to Site Omega. Sarah needs to see this immediately." Site Omega didn't exist in any database. Carved into an asteroid in the Kuiper Belt, beyond the reach of Varrac's sensors, it served as the heart of humanity's silent resistance. Former Admiral Sarah Chen had spent the past 3 years building something unprecedented. A fleet that could match the Varrac's, piece by secret piece. The quantum fold drive works differently than their dimensional breach technology. Elena explained via quantum encrypted transmission. Instead of forcing our way through spacetime, we're finding existing folds and slipping through them. It's more efficient, more stable, and most importantly, completely undetectable to their sensors. Sarah studied the data, her face illuminated by holographic displays. Around her, the command center buzzed with activity. Construction reports from hidden shipyards, training updates from resistance cells, and intelligence feeds from deep cover agents all filtered through this room. "How soon can we scale this up for capital ships?" she asked. 6 months for the first prototype. But Sarah, there's something else. Elena's hologram leaned forward. "We've discovered that the quantum fold technology affects more than just spacetime. It's changing how our ships interact with reality itself. The longer a vessel uses the drive, the more adaptable it becomes to dimensional transitions. You're saying our ships will evolve. I'm saying they already are. The test probe's molecular structure has begun reorganizing itself in ways we barely understand. It's like the material itself is learning." The implications were staggering. While the Varrac's relied on brute force to bend reality, humanity's ships would dance between dimensions, growing more efficient with each jump. But they needed more time. On the surface, life under Varrac's rule continued. Humans worked in their assigned sectors, maintained the alien infrastructure, and showed appropriate deference to their overlords. The Varrac's saw exactly what they expected to see: a conquered species accepting its place. They didn't see the quantum encrypted messages hidden in routine maintenance data. They didn't notice that the efficiency of human workers meant fewer oversight drones were needed. And they certainly didn't realize that every crystal spire they built provided cover for what was happening below. In abandoned subway tunnels, resistance fighters trained with weapons that could pierce Varrac's armor. In repurposed mining facilities, engineers assembled ships that could outmaneuver anything in the Imperial fleet. And in secure bunkers worldwide, humanity's best minds worked to ensure that when the time came, there would be no second chances needed. 4 years into occupation, Sarah received word that the first capital ship was ready for testing. The vessel, christened Prometheus, represented everything humanity had learned. Its quantum fold drive was generations ahead of the prototype. Its hull could adapt to dimensional stress in real time. And its weapons were designed with intimate knowledge of Varrac's vulnerabilities. But as Sarah stood in the hidden shipyard, watching the final systems come online, She knew the hardest part was still ahead. They didn't just need to win. They needed to win so completely that no empire would ever again mistake humanity's patience for weakness. Alina's voice came through her neural link. The Varaks are planning something big. Their energy emissions have been increasing across all spires. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it soon. Sarah touched the ship's hull, feeling the subtle vibrations of power flowing through its adaptive materials. How many ships will be ready in 3 months? 37. Maybe 40 if we push the construction teams. It'll have to be enough. Sarah straightened her back. Decision made. Send word to all cells. Operation Lazarus begins in 90 days. The silent years were coming to an end. Humanity had used their time well, learning, adapting, and preparing. The Varaks thought they had imprisoned a primitive species. They were about to discover they had merely given humanity the tools for their own destruction. Operation Lazarus. The day humanity struck back began with a whisper. In every major city on Earth, maintenance crews reported for their regular shifts at the Varak spires. Their neural implants showed the expected submission patterns. Their behavior matrices indicated nothing unusual. The Varak's observers noted only what they had seen for 4 years. Obedient servants performing their duties. At exactly 300 UTC, Dr. Elena Santos activated a quantum signal that humanity's best cryptographers had spent years perfecting. It propagated through the crystalline networks of every spire simultaneously, carrying a simple message. Lazarus rises. The neural implants that the Varaks had forced upon humanity, meant to ensure compliance, had been quietly reprogrammed over years of careful infiltration. Now they served a new purpose, coordinating the largest synchronized uprising in human history. Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the Prometheus as the first phase began. Maintenance crews didn't just shut down the spire's defense systems, they turned them against their creators. Varak security forces found themselves trapped by their own containment fields. Emergency protocols initiated cascading failures in their communication networks. All teams report ready. Commander Rivera's voice came through the quantum-encrypted channel. Ground forces are moving to secure primary targets. Resistance cells are emerging from dormancy. Sarah nodded, her expression grim. Launch the fleet. Throughout the Kuiper Belt, hidden shipyards activated. 40 warships, each bearing the fruits of humanity's desperate innovation, emerged from their concealment. Their quantum-fold drives hummed with possibility, the ships themselves seeming to flicker between dimensions as they gathered for the strike. The Varak's response was predictably brutal. Imperial warships began emerging from dimensional breaches above major cities, their weapons charging. But humanity had spent 4 years studying those ships, learning their patterns, understanding their weaknesses. All vessels, execute jump pattern Alpha, Sarah commanded. The human fleet vanished, not with the violent dimensional tears characteristic of Varak's technology, but with subtle ripples in reality itself. They reappeared in perfect attack formation, each ship targeting a precisely calculated weakness in the Varak's fleet's deployment. The battle that followed would be studied for centuries to come. Varak ships, relying on brute force and overwhelming power, found themselves unable to lock onto human vessels that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Each time they fired their primary weapons, the human ships would slip between the folds of space-time, emerging where they were least expected. Elena's voice crackled through the command channel. The spires are fully compromised. Initiating Protocol Omega. Across Earth, the crystalline spires that had dominated the skylines for 4 years began to change. The Varaks had never understood the true nature of their own technology. They simply used what worked. But humanity had spent years unraveling the quantum principles behind their dimensional manipulation. Now those same spires became amplifiers for human quantum-fold technology. Each one generated a field that made it increasingly difficult for Varak ships to maintain dimensional stability. Their mighty warships began to flicker and distort, trapped between realities. They're preparing a mass jump, Rivera reported, monitoring the enemy fleet's energy signatures. "Looks like they're calling in reinforcements." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Exactly as predicted. Elena, Quantum Fold Network is ready. All ships are synchronized." The Verax fleet, nearly 300 ships strong, initiated their dimensional breach protocols simultaneously. But as they tore their way into higher dimensions, they found humanity waiting for them. The human fleet, led by Prometheus, had positioned itself within the quantum folds themselves. As the Varax ships emerged, they found themselves surrounded not just in three-dimensional space, but across multiple planes of reality. "All ships, execute Operation Lazarus Final Phase," Sarah ordered. Humanity's weapons fired, but they weren't just firing energy beams or projectiles. They were launching attacks that existed in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. The Verax shields, designed to protect against conventional weapons, might as well have been tissue paper. Ship after ship began to fall, their mighty hulls torn apart by weapons they couldn't fully perceive. The few vessels that attempted to retreat found their dimensional drive technologies failing, turned against them by the very spires they had built to control Earth. From the surface, billions watched as flashes of impossible light filled the sky. The Verax fleet, pride of an empire that spanned galaxies, was being systematically dismantled by the species they had thought safely enslaved. "High Command vessel detected," Rivera announced. "They're attempting to broadcast." "Put it through," Sarah ordered, standing at her command station. High Commander Vexthor's voice filled the bridge, no longer commanding but desperate. "What are you? How is this possible?" Sarah's response was measured, each word carrying the weight of 4 years of preparation. "We are humanity. You gave us the keys to dimensions you never fully understood, and we learned to use them better than you ever could." The battle was far from over. The Verax Empire would not fall in a single day. But as Sarah watched their mighty ships crumble before humanity's quantum fold technology, she knew that everything had changed. Operation Lazarus wasn't just about freedom. It was about showing the galaxy that humanity would never again be underestimated. The chains that bind. The data streamed across Elena Santos's quantum displays, telling a story more remarkable than anyone had anticipated. 3 weeks after Operation Lazarus, humanity's understanding of dimensional physics had grown exponentially. Each captured Verax vessel revealed new secrets, not about their superior technology, but about their fundamental misunderstanding of the forces they wielded. They never realized what they were actually doing, Elena explained to the United Earth Council, her hologram hovering above the conference table in the newly reclaimed Geneva headquarters. The Verax weren't forcing their way through dimensions. They were temporarily shifting their ships into a quantum state of dimensional uncertainty. But because they approached it with brute force, they never saw the larger implications. Admiral Sarah Chen, recently restored to her official rank, leaned forward. "And we're seeing those implications now. Our ships aren't just traveling through dimensional folds anymore," Elena replied, excitement clear in her voice. "They're learning from each interaction. The quantum fold drive isn't just an engine. It's an adaptive system that's teaching our vessels how to exist in multiple states simultaneously." The implications were staggering. While the Varax had spent millennia building bigger ships with more powerful dimensional breach drives, humanity had stumbled upon something far more fundamental: the ability to work with the fabric of reality itself. Reports from the front lines confirmed Elena's findings. The surviving Verax fleet had retreated to their core systems, but not before witnessing something that shook their confidence to the core. Human ships were evolving. Each engagement made them harder to track, harder to hit, and more efficient at exploiting dimensional weaknesses. Commander Rivera, now leading the tactical analysis team, presented his findings. The Verax rely on predetermined attack patterns, assuming their technological superiority makes strategy secondary. But our ships can adapt mid-battle, learning from each encounter. We're not just fighting them, we're outvolving them. But victory had come with costs. Major cities still bore the scars of occupation. their skylines dominated by the repurposed spires. Millions had died in the initial uprising, and the Verax Empire's reach extended far beyond Earth's solar system. This was just the beginning. Sarah stood at the window of her new office in the restored Space Command, watching construction drones dismantle a fallen Verax vessel. "How many ships can we field within the next month?" she asked her AI assistant. Production facilities report 67 vessels ready for quantum fold integration. With the captured Verax technology and our improved understanding of dimensional physics, we can double that number within 90 days. The real advantage, however, wasn't in numbers. Every human ship launch was fundamentally different from its predecessors, incorporating lessons learned from previous encounters. The quantum fold drives were becoming more sophisticated, more intuitive. Some scientists had begun to suggest that the ships were developing a form of dimensional consciousness. Alina's team made another breakthrough in understanding the Verax Empire's true nature. "They're not just conquerors," she reported during an emergency session. "They're dimensional parasites. Each species they subjugate becomes another anchor point for their reality-warping technology. They don't just build empires, they reshape the fundamental structure of spacetime in their domain." This revelation explained their obsession with expansion. The Verax needed to constantly acquire new territories, not for resources or power, but to stabilize their altered version of reality. Their entire civilization was built on a foundation that required constant growth to prevent collapse. Humanity's quantum fold technology offered a different approach. Instead of forcing reality to conform to their needs, human ships learned to work within its natural patterns. Each vessel became a student of the universe's fundamental laws, adapting and evolving to work in harmony with dimensional forces rather than against them. Sarah ordered the implementation of Project Oracle, a daring plan to turn this knowledge into a weapon. If the Verax Empire depended on dimensional stability maintained through subjugation, then humanity would show them the cost of their artificial order. "We're not just fighting ships anymore," Sarah told her commanders. "We're fighting an empire that has written itself into the laws of physics." But they made one crucial mistake. They showed us how to rewrite those laws. The captured spires, once tools of oppression, became humanity's greatest assets. Each one was transformed into a quantum observatory, mapping the dimensional distortions that marked Verax territory. Earth's scientists began to understand the Empire's true vulnerability. Their power was built on a foundation that humanity now knew how to shake. As the first wave of evolved human ships prepared to push beyond the solar system, Sarah received a message from Alina that would change everything. "We've found their point of origin. The dimensional distortions all lead back to a single system. Sarah, we know where they began." The chains that had bound humanity were becoming the keys to their liberation. But more than that, they were becoming the tools that would reshape the galaxy itself. The Verax had never understood the true nature of their power. Humanity didn't just understand it. They were about to perfect it. When giants fall. The Verax homeworld hung in space like a twisted version of reality itself, its surface warped by millennia of dimensional manipulation. The combined fleet of humanity, 200 ships strong, each one evolved far beyond their original designs, maintained position just outside the system's gravity well. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, now barely recognizable from its first launch. The ship's quantum fold drive had evolved to the point where it existed in a constant state of dimensional flux, its hull rippling with patterns that hurt the eyes to observe. Final reports from all ships confirm ready status, Commander Rivera announced. Dr. Santos' calculations are complete. Alina's hologram appeared on the bridge, her expression both excited and apprehensive. The dimensional mapping is clear. Their entire empire is anchored here, in ways they don't even understand. Each conquered world, each subjugated species, creates a strand in a vast web of altered reality. But this is the center of the web. And if we pull this thread? Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. The entire framework collapses. Not violently. That's what makes our approach different from theirs. We're not going to destroy their dimension warping technology. We're going to let it unravel naturally. The Varak's defense fleet appeared exactly as their intelligence suggested it would. Over 1,000 ships, the largest concentration of Imperial power ever assembled. Their dimensional breach drives tore holes in reality as they approached, a display of brute force meant to intimidate. High Commander Vexthor's transmission came through on all frequencies. You have defied the natural order. Surrender now, and perhaps your species will be permitted to survive as a cautionary tale. Sarah didn't respond immediately. Instead, she gave the signal that humanity had spent months preparing for. Every repurposed spire on Earth, every quantum observatory they'd built, every evolved ship in their fleet, all synchronized into a single network of dimensional awareness. You never understood what you built, Sarah finally replied. Your empire isn't a triumph of conquest. It's a house of cards built on fundamental forces you never bothered to comprehend. We're not here to destroy you. We're here to show you what real mastery of dimensional physics looks like. The human fleet moved as one, but they didn't attack. Instead, each ship activated its evolved quantum fold drive in a precisely calculated pattern. They weren't tearing holes in reality or forcing their way through dimensions. They were simply shifting the focal point of existing dimensional folds. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then the Varak ships began to flicker. Their dimensional breach drives, trying to compensate for changes they couldn't understand, started to fail. The massive fleet, pride of an empire that spanned galaxies, found itself unable to maintain basic dimensional stability. Their entire civilization is built on artificial dimensional manipulation, Elena explained as they watched. By realigning the natural folds in space-time, we're not destroying their technology. We're just letting reality reassert itself. The effect rippled outward from the Varak's homeworld. Across their empire, the artificial dimensional framework that had maintained their power for millennia began to gently unravel. Colonial worlds found themselves returning to normal space-time. Subjugated species watched as their Varak's overlords' mighty ships simply faded. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, Rivera reported. Multiple surrender requests coming in. Sarah watched as the once mighty Varak's fleet drifted powerless in space, their ships now bound by the same laws of physics they had spent generations trying to dominate. Tell them we accept their surrender, but with conditions. The age of dimensional manipulation through force is over. In the months that followed, humanity emerged as something unprecedented in the galaxy. Not conquerors, but teachers. The knowledge gained from their evolved quantum fold technology offered a new way forward. Ships could travel between stars without ripping holes in reality. Species could expand without forcing their will upon the fabric of space-time. The former Varak's empire transformed into a loose confederation of worlds, each one learning to work with the natural laws of the universe rather than against them. The mighty spires that had once dominated Earth became universities, where beings from across the galaxy came to study humanity's revolutionary understanding of dimensional physics. Alina's team made one final discovery that changed everything. The quantum fold drives hadn't just evolved. They had achieved a form of dimensional sentience. Each ship had become a living example of how consciousness itself could exist across multiple planes of reality. We didn't just survive their invasion, Sarah told the Galactic Council during its first session. We learned from it. The chains they tried to bind us with became the keys to understanding the universe itself. That's humanity's real strength. Not our ability to fight, but our ability to learn, adapt, and grow. The Varak's homeworld was transformed into a memorial and research center, its twisted surface slowly healing as natural dimensional forces reasserted themselves. The species that had once ruled through fear became students of a better way, their ancient knowledge of dimensional manipulation finally paired with the wisdom to use it properly. Humanity's ships continued to evolve, each generation more attuned to the subtle rhythms of space-time. But they never forgot the lesson learned during those years of occupation. True power lies not in domination, but in understanding. Sarah Chen retired from active command, but she kept the original quantum processor from the Prometheus in her office. Its surface still rippled with impossible patterns, a reminder of how far they had come and how much further they could go. The day humanity's battle fleet rose from the void, billions had watched in awe. But the real victory wasn't in the fighting. It was in what came after. In showing the galaxy that there was always another way forward, humanity had achieved something far greater than conquest. They had achieved understanding.